I have no clue where my latest tier list went that featured Narumi. However, we're going to go ahead and update this one and go from there. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let's get this video to a level of 200 likes. Share the video with your friends as well. Obviously, not everyone will agree with me, but this is where we left off in one of the earlier tier lists. Again, the latest one should feature Narumi. I don't know where it went. So we're going to move this stuff around as we go. In terms of Esau, he is now going to be ranked. I could have did this last week with Ashiro, but I was moving and stuff like that. But anyway, Esau will get ranked. However, quick caveat on Esau, on Esau. He's the only character I don't have. So you've probably seen that in my videos. My luck has been so bad. Dude, I did like 10 straight multis of all weapons, and I'm like, I can't. I'm not going to chase this dude. Do I want to chase him to clear literally one stage in the entire game is the argument. No, I don't. And I should, because I can make videos on him. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to give this game the satisfaction of shafting me the way they did, right? If you didn't see the summons, the game literally started my first two summons with old Esau, and then the next summon was old Esau's weapon. That's disrespect. That is pure disrespect. I can't. Pure disrespect. Anyway, so I said all that to say that I've done research on him. Obviously, I know what the character does, and I'll reference his kit more throughout the video. But I've also checked in on the Japanese player base because they're obviously the much more in-tune player base in terms of there's a lot more players on that side, a lot more spenders as well. So there's that. Also, quick note on the spending piece of this. I don't typically gauge characters outside of the realm that I have them. So for example, with Sagan, one huge problem with her is that she can't protect her team. However, I believe her 6th dupe gives her whole team a shield. So that obviously is in there. But I don't typically, for my tier list, gauge these characters from that lens. I typically judge them on their base level, and then as we go, I will say, oh, if you get X dupe on the character, they also do this, and that's a cherry on top, right? Look, after activating ultimate, applies a shield to the whole team. Like, that's an insane ability. Literally insane. But like, who the hell has, aside from the Krakens over in the Japanese player base, there's not very many of those, right? So anyway, I don't typically do that with my tier list. So that's more or less, it should be more, again, free-to-play friendly, things like that. So Chester, still the best support character in the game. So we're not touching Chester. He's staying where he's at. Like I said with dupes, if you get that first dupe specifically, he skyrockets in value. And he's already far and away the best support. He becomes more far and away the best support. So there you go. On Chester really quick, it's just the sheer amount of flat attack. Download and get started today on a brand new account for Raid Shadow Legends using my code down below in the description. You'll help me out tremendously and I greatly appreciate it. And when you do, you'll get access to Elenaril the Legendary at the sign up. You'll also get Uugo, an Epic champion at level 10, Lightsworn, another Epic at level 20, and Tagore, an Epic at level 30. You also can use Desert Queen to unlock the Legendary 2 Rock. Get started today and get over $200 worth of free goodies, and it helps me out again tremendously, so I greatly appreciate it. By the way, I do play that game tremendously, a ton, all the time. I'm not even kidding. And that being said, if you want to play with me, now is the best time. And if you enjoy my videos, the best thing you can do is help me out with that. And I really appreciate it because they are tracking how many people do sign up through my link. So if you happen to skip that, I understand, but hopefully you heard this and you get started with it. Thank you. He gives 900 or 1,000, depending on what you're doing, attack. And the attack stats in this game are very low. So adding that is very significant. It's extremely significant because the characters don't have tens of thousands of attack. No, they've got just a couple thousand attack, right? So that's extremely significant to get a humongous attack increase like that. He also does, again, damage dealt, critical rate, so a couple other things in there too, but Chester's very strong, so easily a top-end character, one of the best characters in the game. Sagan. So despite lacking that dupe, I will tell you, and even prior to the 2 dupes I got, because I was still saying she was one of the best characters in the game prior to that, because I summoned for her later before she left, and I got those 2 in one summon, if I remember correctly. Anyway, at a 0 dupe level, Sagan is insane. Just the sheer amount of damage over time, extra damage output because she's doing those counters, the ability to draw a 100% aggro. Now there are caveats to that. The fat shield she gives herself, the elemental plus blunt is the best selling point of this character, especially because we still don't have a ton of blunt characters. We're starting to get there, but not really. She's one of only 2 fire characters. They consistently are putting fire and elemental plates out there. So she's just all the utility, everything you need. And then you add in the fact she's got support. That first stoop gives her the best critical rate damage or crit damage buff in the entire game. And crit damage is one of the most significant buffs you can give a character. So that makes her also a top tier supporter too. Even without that first stoop, she's a really good supporter too, just because her base ultimate. So overall, Sagan, one of the best characters in the game. Hoshina, just a character that's just going to keep on hanging on as the best damage dealer in the game. They haven't been able to usurp him yet. I did see a video. Somebody sent me a video on one of my comments of the new ISAO. I think it was on my testing ground stage, so a little bit of a grain of salt. But the new Esau was doing, I think he did 300,000 damage with his ultimate, which did an AoE, so that's a really good number. But Soshiro still, and the thing is, even if a character can match Soshiro for one turn, they can't match him for every turn. That's the thing about it. If he picks up resonance, it's GG's, because he's going to consistently throw the hardest hitting attacks in the game. And it's not even the ultimate, it's the combat skill. So just, it is what it is. He's so damn strong, I just stopped using the character. I was saying in my videos, I hadn't used him in like weeks. He's just so strong, it feels dirty, bro. Anyway, Renault. So if you're keeping track, there's only 3 roles in this game. We have the best supporter, the best defensive character, and the best damage dealer. All 3 of those characters were the top 3 characters that we ranked. Now, quick note on this, because now we've got a straggler here, and that is Renault. So I actually do think you could make a legitimate argument to move Renault out of SSS and move him down to SS. And I think that will be a very fair argument. The only reason he is going to sustain on SSS is because they continue to put elemental / ice plates on content. Now, that doesn't mean Renault isn't a quality character. We're nitpicking a bit here. He's still an immensely strong character. He still does all the things that make him great, right? He still does all that stuff. I think we're starting to see a little bit, though, where you would really like to have an ice attacker that's able to do an AoE or something like that, right? I think we're starting to see some of that. And that's where like Sagan also excels, because she's got that AoE ultimate. And while it doesn't do any damage at all, it does an elemental and a blunt hit. So it's extremely strong. And all the hits she takes and all those, and just the counters and stuff, but the hits she takes feels her gauge. So she's going to consistently get to those ultimates and throw it off. So like, there's so much there, right? And they release within a span of a week of each other, right? Either way, I do think they're both immensely high utility characters because of their types and the affinities that they have. But I do think that there is some stuff holding Renault back, and some of that's just he's single target until he gets to the ultimate. He doesn't really do a ton with his initial abilities, right? There's not a ton in his initial abilities there. He's right here, actually. His weapon is great, obviously, but I don't really talk too much about the weapons. Ice Crystal. This is extra chip damage, right? He's not really doing much. So, but again, the ultimate's huge. It's great. I love the freeze, the action order, all that stuff. He's great. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I think Renault is an amazing character. I think that because of the fact that he's relegated early on, they're pushing him a little bit further. And I think if we saw like AoE or blast attacking ice type, he would just drop probably to like maybe SS, but he'd drop for sure. Old Esau, to be specific. Old Esau is interesting because you just saw me get him to A6. I did a video on him the other day. Sorry if you got confused with that. Thought that was the new Esau. I wish, but no. That was, like I said, I had already done that, and then they drop a new Esau. I had no idea that was coming, so I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll just go F myself. Then I won't put my video out, but no, I still did it. Anyway, even at 0 dupes, Esau is insane. Why? Because we are in a point where we need the survivability more often. There was a thing early in this game for the first month and a half, and it also made Sagan not feel as good as she actually was for a lot of people. I remember the complaints about her damage, her counters not breaking plates, all these other things. There's been this thing in the latter month and a half where they truly tried to uptick the damage, or not the damage, well, I guess that too, but the enemy difficulty. And so by spiking the enemy's attack, defense, and HP stats, now you get to a point where the enemies are hitting you for 600 damage. That's not a lot, but it makes the latest stage, for example, that's the perfect example, the latest stage of Large Conquest, where there's like 5 enemies. They all take turns consecutively, and they're really fast. They're going to start off at the beginning of the turn, damn near. They're going to throw 4 hits at you. Some of them are going to do AoEs. You just need the survivability, dude. You just do. It just is what it is. And so a character like him, I think is still easily one of the best characters in the game. And then you move on from that. Blunt typing is great. His damage is whatever. I'll never say anything about that. If you've got him with his weapon, he's also getting damage cut in there. He's got effect resistance, I believe, in his passive. He's got the shields, of course. And then the shields also give allies damage, so he's not just totally worthless in terms of offense. He does help. So, insane character. And I think he is easily one of the best characters. We're not going to move Kikuru either. I could go through this much faster if I just said who we're going to move, but I want to apply context. We're not moving Kikuru. I think she's aging better. Her damage still leaves a little bit to be desired just because I really hate the penetration. I just hate penetration, to be honest. And her attack stats probably the lowest among all these attack type characters. Anyway, the ultimate spam, the blast attacking, she just breaks so often. Very high value character. Not as high value as Chester, who she released alongside, but easily one of the best characters in the game. Also, Narumi, one of the best plate breakers in the entire game, if not the single best. As we add more plates types in there, he kind of loses a little bit of value, but specifically designed for that function, and he's been traditionally the best character at that, so he's not moving down. These 2 characters, I'm going to just go a little bit faster. They're not moving either. We need the survivability. She's great. He's still the best single support in the game. Kaiju number 8, I think that's fair as a placement for him. Ashiro, I think that's fair as a placement. She could go down to B. I think I said this in that video. I think we're going to make a swap here. I'm dropping Kikuru down and I'm raising Kafka. And so what's happening here is Kikuru is just a character where she's getting, again, it's not because she can't do damage. It's not because she can't be useful. All these 5 stars in B tier can be useful. What's happening here, though, is that she's just becoming less and less relevant, right? As a single type character that's got a blast attack and then a single attack ultimate, you've got better options. That's what it is. You've just got better options. And so it pushes her down my list. Kaiju number 8 would be a character I would be tempted to push down, but his damage is still very high. I tested him recently and did a video on it. His damage is still very high, and especially once you get that third dupe, where he heals a little bit, his sustainability is better. He still wants to be alongside like an Esau, don't get me wrong, but still good character. Ashiro here, I think we're at a point in the game, by the way, where you don't have to use, in fact, it's not even so recommended to use these dedicated support characters anymore. You can use them, but maybe 1 per team. That's it. We're not really doing the triple support or anything like that anymore with the latest content, because these support characters just get pressured so hard. You also are seeing characters, like I've been saying so far, that are doing multiple things, right? You've got Isaos, you've got Sagons where they're supplying damage buffs. You've got the new Narumi who applies damage buffs to your team. Things like that. We're seeing characters that are trying to push these 4-star supports out of the meta. So you could argue they go down a bit. KG, AG, whichever the one that is next to Kafka, he's there because he has a stun. He's got blunt type and shot type. He's got an AoE too. Stun is useful also because it increases critical damage. If you're ever using a character that stuns, there's only like, I think, 2. And then Kafka. Kafka I always thought was pretty good. Definitely better than he got credit for being. Was worth building in my opinion. But also goes up a bit because of his value as a AoE attacker, particularly in Large Conquest. However, since I moved him up, that means I need to make another change. Kota and Tay. They actually, I think, I like Tay much better than Kota. If I'm being honest, like so much better. So I'm gonna move Tay up to A just because of the usability. So there's not been, for the record, I waxed poetic about Sagan. There's not been a single stage that had a fire specific plate on it that I have not been able to beat with Tay instead of Sagan. I'm pretty sure I've got video evidence of all of this. Every single stage that had a fire plate on it, I have been able to use Tay instead. Because if all you truly need is to break the plate, she can do that for you. She's got a strong burn too, I guess, but she can break the plate, and that's good. And the reason why I like her more than Kota is because she's got 2 of those fire skills. He only does it on his ultimate, so that means he's slow. So that's the only thing that's holding him back. And there have been more and more, and I could argue he goes up too. There's been more and more fire and ice stages. So it is what it is. The other change we need to make is we are going to actually move her up all the way up to. So last time I did this tier list, I said, hey, she's an SSS character. But because I was gauging it based on content that wasn't that specific mode, I didn't put her there because she's not great anywhere else. It's just not. But, and I'll say the same thing. She is a triple S character in Large Conquest. However, the problem with that judgment is that if I do it that way, this entire list shakes up. For example, Renault is not a triple S character in this. Single target damage dealers are not an SSS character in Large Conquest. Hoshina's mostly fine. Actually, he's really good because he doesn't get resonance, which is the one time it's okay in that mode because you just want him to continue doing as many kills as possible. Kaiju number 8 is worse than probably A rank, right? This Hoshina down here goes up. This whole list changes. So I'll split the difference. I think S is fair. I will put her in S tier. I think that's fair because she is still a valuable character to build and invest in. And so I think that's fair. That's the highest she's ever ranked on any of my tier lists. But I really wanted to, because if we're going to get Large Conquests every month, obviously, like I said, I can make it a specific mode tier list, but her value is high. And overall, this version of this tier list isn't dedicated on any 1 or 2 stages. That was the last version was dedicated on the hardest possible content. This is a value tier list of what I think these characters are worth overall and owning these characters. And so back to the B tier, I don't think there's a ton of value in any of these characters. You could argue this. I'll give you that because we moved Tay up. Fine. Go for it. And it's simply because of the AoE. But I don't value anything else. I don't value any of the C tier characters right now. That doesn't mean, again, they can't be good. That doesn't mean they don't have usability. That doesn't. Blah. Every time I say this stuff, somebody's like, oh, so-and-so has XYZ. I get it. I know. Right? I know. But they're still in Z tier. So new characters, finally. Ashiro, SS tier character. I'm going to go rapid fire on this. Esau, SS tier character. Narumi, SSS tier character. Isn't it fitting? He's a limited character, so he actually makes the jump. So last time I did a tier list, he was an SS character. Well, what changed? I think that Narumi is aging better, and he's going to be a character that has much more usability as we go on. The single biggest weakness that he has, and it's so intentional, they did that crap on purpose, is that he's a single target character. The fact they made him a single target character through and through is a humongous nerf relative to the old Narumi. It's a humongous nerf. Because if he was able to do what the old Narumi does, he would just be a direct upgrade. But it's not that bad because it means the old Narumi still has a use case, right? Anyway, unless they just shifted the playstyles like they did with the ISAOs. It's not the same thing. So anyway, I think he's aging great. I think that he is actually extremely strong in the latest Type A Kaiju fights and all that stuff. He does a great amount of damage if you build him with his own weapon. Remember, that was something I was talking about, debating whether you should build him that way, etc. By the way, he's another example of like dupes. If you get that first dupe in him, he gets his charges so much faster. Remember, I was saying he's slow, this and that, especially on that first turn. And I was doing videos and I was saying, oh, if you do this, you do that, put this unipart set on this weapon, then blah, blah, blah. I did all that stuff. And all that stuff is still true. If you follow my guides, then you've had great usage of him. However, he does really good damage. And the universal plate breaking is really strong. Now, it's not random. It will pull the 3 leftmost plates. So the problem with that is that if you're not watching that or breaking those other plates, it may break ones that you don't want him to break. But the sheer fact he can do that is ridiculous. And the sheer fact he can throw that ultimate so consistently is ridiculous. And by the way, he's the one single target, purely single target character that I actually think is good in Large Conquest. Why? Because Large Conquest is already easier to get your ultimates, and he already has the ability to get the ultimates quicker with the, what's it called? With the wave stuff he does. So he's fine, man. He's fine. Now, I don't believe they shift waves, but regardless, he's able to consistently do that. He can offset your need for a plate breaker in that mode too, especially on the harder to kill Kaiju in Large Conquest. And he does also support allies as well, what's seen through. He is tremendously good. Narumi is tremendously good. And I'm saying all this with zero dupes. So I think that he is a character that, again, really strong, easily SSS. Now, Oshiro, I'm not going to spend too much time on her. The fact she can take 2 turns and do technically 2 turns and just get that extra out of turn damage is really strong. She gets charged up pretty quickly, fires that ultimate. She's got all those blast attacks in there. She just does a shit ton of damage cumulatively. And so that's really what makes her strong. She's got some survivability with her own built-in shield. Bako also being on the action order is very useful, because that's one less enemy that could potentially be on the small list of action order. It's not the biggest thing, but it matters. Also, I think that with her, it would be nice if she had any sort of duel, but purely being shot is not great in general. But if you can be shot and consistently throw out all those blast attacks to consistently break all those plates, shot and physical, just neutral or physical whatever, then that's really good too. So overall, extremely strong character, easily worth having. And she's one of those characters that, like, she doesn't have the single biggest hitting attack. And this is going to be true for the next ISAO too. They don't have the single big attack like Hoshina does, where it's like, here's a 300,000 damage attack, right? But if you count all their damage throughout the round, the entire stage, you go at the end and it's like, oh, Soshiro did the most damage out of everybody. That's the total damage output matters, right? And it's because she takes so many chances at the apple, so many attacks. Last up, Esau, similar deal. Esau is an interesting one because he is somebody that, so there's been a lot of blunt type plates on enemies and stuff like that. So having the ability to be a AoE blunt breaker, just like, again, Kikuru does, you're really good. However, I will say Esau is a better damage dealer than Kikuru is just by default. But I do think at that specific job of being a blunt plate breaker, that's such a tongue twister, she is the better character at that, because she starts off with that ultimate. She gets the next ultimate back so quickly, so she just is spamming those. But Esau has a lot of damage buffs in his kit. And again, he never really gets to the same peak of a purely offensive character where they're just like a Soshiro once again, where they're just designed for that. However, he does have the ability to be really good. I think they purposely limited him to as well by giving him things like this small ass 5% crit buff. It's like 4.4 or something like that, unless without this dupe invested also. He's not really doing anything crazy there. 51% to all Kaiju, again, similar deal. All Kaiju blunt damage up. Gets a modifier here for blunt damage. Another all Kaiju hit, so 3 AoEs in there. Again, that's where a character like old Hoshina falls off, only gets 1 AoE. Blunt damage, single target. Here, crit damage up. And then here, if for each Kaiju on the field, damage up goes up by 5%. Obviously, this is exceptionally strong in the large conquest, but it's also really good in any content where you can hit 3 enemies at a time. That's really good. And then also, I don't really talk a ton about dupes once again, but in his dupes, he has so many ways to get more damage. Damage up, attack up. He's got, what, crit rate or something in there. Ultimate gauge goes up if he attacks a Kaiju. By the way, if this one is actually insane, because if he hits more than 1 Kaiju, he hits 3, he'll get 15. He'll get 15. He will not get 5 at a time, just every attack. No, he'll get 15. If he hits 5, he'll get 25. Right? We can math here. Blunt damage goes up. That's really strong too, but I'm not so much, again, interested in the dupes. Lastly, on the weapon is really strong too. And obviously everything I've said has been in consideration of them having their primary weapons, of course. If he's attacking 3 or more Kaiju, he gets more damage up here, crit damage up. So there's just so many ways for him to get more damage overall. And so he's going to blow up large conquest. At the bare minimum, he'll be a good sub DPS on your teams. He's not able to be your primary because he doesn't have the same ceiling. Good sub. And then also, he doesn't have the utility of supporting others. I know it's starting to get stuffy again. He doesn't have all those things like other characters like Narumi do, and that's what holds him back. I'm not going to do it for anyone else, and I'm not going to do it for him. I can make an argument for him to be an S, because even Kikuru, while she doesn't do the damage, she does spam those attacks, which spam defense down. He doesn't have the same utility. And I do think as a standalone character, old Esau has more value. So if you wanted to move new Esau down to S, that's fine, but that's mostly it. So overall though, Brad, I feel pretty good about this. There's not a lot of movement that I think needs to happen. I think you could quibble over a few placements, Like I said, especially some of the ones like Hoshina and Rin, where I move them around just simply because they're good in other modes. Or Kafka too, he could go back to B if you felt that way. I move these characters simply because they're good in other modes, and this tier list is mainly predicated on value. So yes, that does mean I think that the most valuable characters to own are the characters on the top row. Renault is a little bit of a sneak there, but some of that's just because he's an ice character. But you also have 2 limited characters and 2 characters that are not available right now. Well, they're available, you just have to get lucky, right? But you have 2 limited characters as 2 of the top characters in the game. So that is pretty interesting. So Narumi is also going to be leaving. He might be gone by the time this video goes out, to be honest. I'm not sure. But hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.